now I got a proper front brake on the RZ. A Nissan unit of a 2015 CBR 500. So this is kind of my little round town bike, but it is quite fun on a curvy road. The tires are really skinny, and I'm still getting used to the profile. It's just really different from the sport bikes and stuff that I'm used to, the way that it leans. So I don't understand a ton about profile and how it affects lean. But I feel like I add a bunch of speed through the turn and the lean doesn't increase that much. Whereas I think because of the flat profile of modern sport bikes, the way that they're flat on the shoulders, I think when you add speed, it has a different relationship to lean angle. It's got pretty good clearance, or I think it does. I don't feel like I've ever been really close to touching pegs, and I guess that's out of my own fear and caution. But I guess the pegs are quite high. The suspension isn't exactly amazing, so I don't want to overdrive the other components. I think the way that it is right now, with the upgraded brakes, that it's a really nice compromise. Where all the parts work together pretty well. You can upgrade a bike to the point that it's not any fun. Because if you put too much into the suspension and you don't put it into the engine, then you'll be constantly bored on the straights. Conversely, you put too much into the engine and not anything into the suspension, you'll be scared to death in the corners. So ideally you'll reach the limits of all the components at the same time, around the same speed. And then you'll be like, oh, I'm pushing the bike. It's fun to push a bike that has modest limits to its limits. And when the bike starts complaining, then you just back down. Now, if you've upgraded it to the point where it doesn't complain like it should, and then you just suddenly reach the limit of one of the parts and it catches you off guard, that's how you end up crashing. And for me, the glaring issue with the FZR that I needed to fix was the rear shock. That was the weak component that made it scary at times. Now the skinny tire just tried to follow the rut in the road, and it was a little bit scary. It kind of wiggled. The key is not to have the best components. It's to have components that work really well together. And when people go modifying bikes, a lot of times they don't realize that. Like, I could put a big 4-piston Brembo on the front of this bike, and then it would do stoppies. But then it would actually probably be scary going into turns. I love that little turn. The camber on it is just really cool. It's really unstable. Love that turn. The way you flick into it. This is a little straight that you can get some serious speed on. Indicated 100. But then you got to brake really hard for this turn. Another flick. So this video, I just wanted to kind of focus on how important it is to make a bike's parts work together. Instead of running out and buying that name brand and that most expensive component, just think about making the bike work as a whole. Because you could have the most amazing upside down forks, but if the rest of the bike isn't up to, you know, if the rear shock isn't up to the forks, then it's not going to work. Doesn't mean you shouldn't upgrade. I upgraded the brakes and I love them. They're not too strong, easy to modulate, and that's the reason they're easy to modulate, is because I chose the master cylinder that went with this caliper from the factory. People don't realize that the size of the master cylinder makes a big difference. So one option that I had when I was upgrading these brakes was just to upgrade the master cylinder, because somebody told me, oh, the master cylinder is probably the problem, which I think the master cylinder was the culprit of the spongy brakes. But you have to size, if you upgrade the master cylinder for more stopping power, then it's got to be sized to your caliper correctly, or else you have either a lever that pulls all the way to the bar like I had, or it's hard as a rock. When I had my CBR 250, the master cylinder went out, and my mechanic got one off of a Gixxer, and it was cheap. It was one he had lying around. Well, the problem is the Gixxer has two calipers, two 4-piston calipers. So the master cylinder is a gigantic 19 millimeters or something, because it has to push on 8 pistons. Well, that's great if you've got 8 pistons, but if you only have 2 pistons like I had, then it's hard as a rock, and it's got no brake feel, and the leverage ratio is off. So when you want to put maximum stopping power on it, you can't, because your leverage ratio is wrong. So the key is to size them correctly, and I was doing the research, and the stock caliper is a single piston, and the aftermarket master cylinders that I found were all sized for 2 piston or more. If I get the wrong size master cylinder, then it's going to be a useless upgrade. And for the price of a master cylinder, an aftermarket one, I was able to buy this whole used setup on eBay off a 2-year-old bike. But at the end of the day, I've got a really good functioning master cylinder and caliper that work together. And your whole bike, you need to focus on that ethos of making the parts work together. Beautiful Beautiful Sun Moon Lake. I live next to the paradise everyone travels to and takes pictures.